Frank's joined me on my stream, and looking forward to it. There's Frank Lavinia, my brother from another mother, and
And my
co-host
audio,
of All
my
Stuff.
my audio even works too.
You know, it sounds better even than it has been. Did you do something
Really?
else?
No,
It's weird.
I had more coffee, so maybe my voice isn't quite
Maybe
so.
that's it. It could be the coffee.
Can't go wrong with
You
coffee.
you cannot. Um, Let me get a screen share here because I want to talk some about triggers. And let's see, there's screens, and I'm going to share that one and go ahead and I think it. Okay, yeah, it puts us down in the bubble.
There we go.
Um, I've been playing around some, Frank, with triggers, and I actually showed you some of this. I guess it was earlier this week,
Yeah,
maybe
you were
late
showing
last
me
week.
like, and it's pretty cool actually. I like what you've done with this.
Well, it's been I've been playing around with this a bunch, and so what I'd like to do is I want to go ahead and just build something from scratch here, and I need a few
Hmm.
things open. I don't have everything open yet. I need Data Explorer or our Storage Explorer open, so I'm opening that now in another of these screens. I've got three screens now, Frank. I'm thinking of going to five.
Look what I have.
Um, I'm trying to be as cool as you. You know this,
That's
but
funny.
I've been looking at some of the curved monitors.
The curved
So
monitors are awesome. I have two curved
are
monitors stacked like that.
they,
The
that's what everybody
uh-oh, your audio
keeps
is like getting
telling
choppy. Sorry.
me, and I'm like,
Uh-oh.
you know, what's up? What did you lose me?
I lost you for a second, so I don't know if that's a Frank problem or like a restream problem or an Andy problem. Who knows?
Yeah, not sure. How long would you estimate that you
I
lost me
was
for?
pointing at my curved monitors, and
I see.
I have. I tell you, the 21 by 9. You cannot
Yeah,
beat the 21 by 9 aspect ratio with curved. Like
really.
it
Okay.
is
Okay.
outstanding. Like
So the
it
ones I
just
was looking at, I saw some that were 21, and I saw other 16.
Mhm.
It sounds like you are recommending the 21s.
Absolutely, because
Okay.
particularly you do a lot of podcast editing, you do a lot of video editing. It's perfect for all
Yeah.
the Adobe tools, and
Okay.
it's just you can't beat it. Like I think originally I built the six monitor rig for that purpose, the video editing,
Yeah.
but now I do most of the work on the 21 by 9s.
And the six, those are behind you, right?
Those behind me. Yeah. So this is
That's what
the
makes it look like Frank is on the bridge of the Nebuchadnezzar.
that's right. The Matrix
Yes.
has you. Um, so all the PCs here, I think we've long shared our love of the Expanse,
Yes.
and that behind me, the six monitor rig is called Behemoth,
Nice.
and this one here is called Anubis.
Gotcha.
I'm talking to you today on my work PC, which does not have a fancy name,
I see.
but I do have a docking station that's I can plug in and with my personal laptop. So that's the
Nice.
Rocinante.
Ah, I got you. You got to have something named Rocinante.
Of course,
That's a rule. Okay.
a
So
legitimate salvage.
I kicked up. That's right. I kicked up my VM because that's where I've been working from mostly
Hmm.
on this, and I think this is what I share with you. I was trying to do it from the host. Pretty sure the host isn't fully set up for managing this,
So
but
just for my own education, I'll ask the
sure,
dumb
sure.
questions.
No, there's no dumb
Um,
questions, Frank.
um, the VM, you're in the VM. Are you simulating kind of an on-prem gateway like machine? Is that what this is doing?
That's a great question, and yeah, to start with. And I'm not going to go through all of the stuff that I showed you, by the way. I'm still working on some of the other pieces and parts.
Yeah, some of it's still
Um,
for super secret squirrel.
it is kind of. I mean, it'll come out, but I've got a couple of precons coming up in 2023. Um, I don't know if I can mention one of them in February, but if I said February, you probably already can guess what that is. But I'm doing one of SQL Bits in March, and my goal is to get the super secret stuff figured out by SQL Bits so that I can do work there and to
So what are you
present the state.
using for your VM? Like what are you using?
Hyper-V. I use Hyper-V.
Hyper-V?
Yeah, I've looked at some of the others. Back when I was an MVP, I could get VMware for free, at least for a
Hmm.
while. I'm not sure if that still holds or not.
I don't know. I haven't
Um,
tried.
but I tried VMware for a while. It's awesome. I went back to Hyper-V because I like the integration with Windows. I'm not taxing these systems by any stretch,
Hmm.
and so I'm happy with what I've got. Um, so over here, let me see if I can get Zoom it going. I've got a trigger here. I've got a trigger named Trigger Blob Created, and right now it's connected to one pipeline. That's what that related does, and I can actually open that from here, I believe. Yeah, it takes me to this, which is one of the super secret things that I've been tinkering around with. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to detach the trigger from there and then close it. And I'm not using any kind of source control. Yeah, it's fussing at me right now saying, "Hey, you can't publish a trigger that's not hooked to anything," and they're not wrong. But so what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to create a pipeline, and just call it Frank and Andy pipeline. Very creative here today, and I'm going to use that trigger. I'm not going to be able to publish anything here until I do some stuff with it. So what I'm going to start with, and I know this is jumping around a little bit, and the big reason for that, Frank, is I just got my head kind of around this about a week ago with the help of my other brother from another mother, Mark Cromer, who is works at Microsoft. I'd botch his title if I tried to do it, but he's like a program manager or something like that for mapping data flows,
Nice.
which are now just called data flows in ADF. You can actually see them over here if we poke around. They're in there, and as they're under move and transform, we have where we can call one. But then if I minimize pipelines, you can see data flows in here. Mark is scary smart, and he's got a good feel for what what data engineers really need in here. And I was talking to him about this trigger thing because I kept reading about, okay, when I drop a file into a blob container, I want it to fire this process. And in fact, I've got this working even now for Andy Weather. Over here behind over my shoulder, I just looked to see if it was running, and it has been running really well for the last little bit. But every now and then something will mess with it and it'll flake out. It could be
So for
that it's
those
been
not
running.
familiar, sorry, Andy, I
Yeah,
cut you off.
go
For
ahead.
those
Go,
not
go.
familiar, Andy Weather is your weather station that you use primarily as an example for pumping in data from an IoT device. And the data is ugly, like warts and all, right? Like, so it not only
Yes.
does it show weather, sometimes you get nulls. So it's a good
Yes.
example of what a real time feed would look like. Sorry
Thank
for
you
the
for
interruption.
no, thank you for the interruption, and because I'm rambling over here with all my tribal knowledge. I've been doing Andy Weather now for about 14 years.
Has it been that long?
So I know, yeah, it's coming up on, I want to
Wow.
say it's coming up on 15 here in a couple of weeks because it started when, before there was what we call the cloud now. It's like 2007, December of 2007.
Right.
GoDaddy did put what they called a SQL Server DMZ out there.
I
And all of a
remember that.
sudden, I
Mm-hmm.
could write to an instance of SQL Server. Um, and I had this weather station producing, updating CSV files every hour or so. And I wrote a little SSIS package that would run every hour and just pump the data up into that database. Um, fast forward to now, and really this is probably somewhere in the 5 or 6 versions later. Um, I moved the entire CSV file now. I've got a little application. In fact, if you want to see exactly what I'm doing, andyleonard.blog and search for Andy Weather IoT. And, the code's actually in there for how I'm doing this. And
Oh, very
wow,
cool.
we're having a CSS moment here.
I can see that.
Yeah, weird.
So, are you going to do the same thing with the greenhouse?
Yeah, in fact, there's some links on the andyweather.com page that does actually goes to a page that we set up to collect metadata from or weather data from the greenhouse. It's not running right now. We're in between versions. Um, my son Stevie Ray is doing a lot of that work, and he's done some presentations. He actually did a presentation at Richmond SQL Saturday a year or so ago, where he was getting SQL Server to run uh, on a Pi, on a Raspberry Pi, and he's started playing with it again. He's graduated now and he did about a year working in the trades, and he's got a job in IT that he's had for a few months now, and he started working on it again, and now everything's changed with Azure Edge as part of it's kind of the infrastructure that you need to set up. He's got that going. He's got one of our Pi
Edge
4s.
Edge is
Edge.
going to be a big story in the next 2 years, right?
I
Obviously,
agree.
I'm biased when it comes to, because we have OpenShift and MicroShift
Yeah.
at Red Hat, but like you're seeing edge computing becoming kind of a thing. I was on a customer call maybe like 2-3 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and they introduced me to the concept of near edge and far edge,
Oh, interesting.
which basically I'll come up with a contrived example so I don't give them away. So Andy Leonard, Andy Weather. Let's try to do
Yeah.
like an Andy Weather or Andy Greenhouse thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Example, right? So near edge in their terminology is that the server that is in the greenhouse, right, or whatever's collecting that, right, and then
Yeah.
far edge are the actual sensors that are feeding the data back.
Oh, neat.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's
And
kind of
we've
how they
got that
define that.
architecture
And you
in the
you
greenhouse.
probably do, yeah, like
Yeah.
and we have a comment actually from Farnsworth Heather.
Oh, Heather. Yeah.
You can
I
I
have to
can't,
dig that up.
if I click on the name, it doesn't like pop up
I see chat.
on the thing,
Heather
but I
is
see.
saying, did not know you did this. Yep, Heather, I do this, and I was mentioning Stephen just earlier, Stevie Ray, and Stevie Ray. He's Heather is actually Stevie's boss. We've
Oh,
known
cool.
each other, through a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, and he he's working for her now. So
Oh,
Stevie's
cool.
not on this call because he's busy at work right now, doing his job. But yeah, thanks for popping in. And Heather, one reason you didn't know I did this is I had to stop because my internet got so bad that I couldn't do anything like this. Now it's better, and as you can see, but this is the Andy Weather Accurate.csv. And if you go over here to the blog post, the code for an application that runs every hour, it's being called by Windows Scheduler in Windows 7. I'm not making that up. 32-bit Ultimate, Frank. That old box has 2
Wow.
gigs of RAM. And people say, well, why would you do that? Well, as an engineer, I like stressing systems. And if you put
can
it on
get,
a way
yeah.
underpowered box, you know. So anyway, it walks through all of the stuff here, including the code. You can download the code.
You should port it to Linux. No, just kidding.
Well, it's funny. So the greenhouse stuff is running on Linux.
I'm not surprised. Yeah,
Yeah,
because it's
and
come a
SQL
lot
Server runs.
further in the last, like in Linux has also come a lot further in the last 14 years as well. Like in
Yeah.
terms of and the Raspberry Pi right there. I mean, you can run Windows 10 on Raspberry Pis, but
Sure.
there's I don't want to say there's no good reason, but unless you need the UI functionality that a UWP or modern app or Metro app, whatever they call it
Yeah.
now,
Yep.
there's really no big advantage. And plus, most implementations of Raspberry Pis tend to be headless,
Yes.
and you can just use a web service or web UI to access it from
Yeah.
somewhere else.
And Stevie's, he found the Linux distros. He found a few that he's played with. I want to say earlier when he did this first version that we had running for months. I want to say he was running that on Mint, and
Probably.
now that he's in Azure IoT, he's using a different one. But it as far as I know, it is open source Linux distro. So, but the idea now is so before we were trying to get SQL Server for Linux running on that Pi, and he did it once. And right after he did that, and to perfect time, and before he did his presentation, they changed it, and an update fired, and it blew up his demo. So that never happens. Never happened to you or me. So,
so he's getting real world experience. It sounds like
absolutely,
yeah.
And you kind of got to get used to that heartbreak if you're going to do this kind of work.
Oh yeah.
It's part of the job. So nothing works the first time. If it does, be suspicious you missed something.
Right, something is going to break. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So,
this is why I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, go ahead.
This is why I was like when I was at reInvent the last session I went to, it was about how Amazon does this at scale,
right,
with all of their buildings and stuff like that. I know,
yeah.
I thought it was a fascinating thing because this, and it's not always about the sensors per se, right? That's kind of and obviously from my point of view, it's not also about the AI, right?
Right.
What you're doing to get it from kind of from the last mile up to home base, that's all data engineering.
It is. Yeah, it really is. And what's nice about the interconnectivity that's here in Azure, and you've got similar interconnectivity in all of the clouds when you're piping data around, is you can configure a trigger like this trigger is configured here to watch for files, for blobs to be created in this pipeline container here. And I'll zoom in so the folks that are running smaller screens. Frank's got like the wall OTV, but here we've got one, and we're just waiting for a file to come in here. When it does finish loading, which I think is a neat feature, right? It doesn't like immediately pop when it starts loading. File sniffers have been infamous for that in the past, and that it waits until it finishes, and then it fires, and it does something kind of interesting because and you can't see it in here until I go and create a pipeline that has parameters in it, but there are actually parameters available in that trigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a set variable activity here to just go read part of the stuff inside of the parameters for the ADF pipeline. I'm going to add one, and I'm going to name it blob name, no value here for that. And I'm going to create a variable called vblob name just to give it a little bit of separation there. Also no variable and no value in there. And so inside of set variable, I needed a variable to write the parameter value into. And I do this for a couple reasons. One is I want to be, the main reason is I want to be able to later read the value from the parameter. And when I'm troubleshooting this, I can actually see the set variable activities output, and it's going to hopefully show me the name of the blob that I just dropped into here. So I'm going to go ahead and pick, there's my variable vblob name, and it's telling me to add dynamic content. Now, if you haven't had the pleasure, this is the Azure Data Factory expression language, and it's just as lovely as all the other expression languages out there. But what's nice is under parameters
is that
here,
DAX?
No, it is ADF native.
Oh, so it's
Um,
another language, and it's not USQL. It's not.
right.
Okay, I'm just curious. Like, sorry for the dumb questions.
No, Frank, they're not dumb questions. No, this is its own iteration here. It is. Um, there's a lot of overlap. I don't want to say 100%, but it's close to that between what you have here building pipelines in Azure Data Factory and what you have in Synapse building pipelines there. So when you're ingesting in Synapse, almost everything that you've learned in Azure Data Factory will apply to pipelines in Synapse, which is kind of cool. In fact, Mark, one of the things Mark Cromer shared with me when I was asking him some questions about this recently is that the reason they look so similar in the UI is ADF and Synapse Analytics for pipelines at least is because they use the exact same microservices under the hood. So that explains a lot of why there's so much similarity. There's some additional functionality in Synapse that isn't available in ADF. It's not a lot, but it's enough to throw the UIs off a little bit. So there's a little bit of difference between the UIs and Synapse. And it's only in like, I don't know, half a dozen places that it shows up. There's a difference there. But the rest of the time, it looks the same. And it works the same because it's the same code under the hood. But whenever you build an expression, Frank, just kind of the syntax of it, it always starts with this at symbol that kind of lets it know that this is to be interpreted as an expression. There are a few collections like this in ADF. I'm going to show you a second one here in a minute, but this is the pipeline. And you can note that begin in paren kind of identifies this as the pipeline artifact or object. Excuse me.
So while you catch your breath after coughing and go on mute, I actually have to go
Thanks, Frank.
because I got to hang out. I got to hang up Christmas lights before it gets too dark.
I know that
So
you had that to do already. Thank you for
yeah,
hanging out with me so long
I
and
totally
asking
wish I could. I
excellent,
wish I could hang out more because this is cool
excellent
stuff. Like,
questions. Yeah, we'll do it some more.
cool, man. And you have a great rest of the stream. Bye, everyone. If I don't see
Thanks,
you, have a
Frank.
good weekend. Thanks,
All
Andy, for
right.
having me on. This
You
is
too,
cool.
brother. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, continuing on, one of the collections inside of that pipeline object is the parameters collection. We just defined a parameter name, blob name, and it showed up here under the parameters tab, and I could just click it. If I click it again, it'll put it up there again. I don't want to do that. And I'm just telling it, hey, write into the value named vblob name, into the variable name vblob name, write the value of that parameter. Now, you may say, Andy, where's that? You didn't default either of these. They both have default values that are empty, and you're correct. Where's that value coming from? Great question. So I'm going to click Add Trigger, and under New or Edit, it's going to pop out the trigger blade. And I'm going to use that trigger I detached from my other earlier here. Let's see. Somebody wants to offer a promotion. You know that's spamming, and if I right-click this, and actually, if I go to the three ellipses here, and if I add you to the block list, it actually reports you for doing that. So I hope it was worth it. So back here, um, I am picking that trigger named Trigger Blob Created that I showed earlier, and it's a blob events trigger, and it's already set up for me here. This happened when I created the trigger itself. It's going to run on blob created. And there's a little bit of information here, but not much. But the magic happens when I click continue, it actually goes and looks into that pipeline container. Now, let's pause here for just a minute and go look at the pipeline container. That's part of Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer. This is free. You can go get it at storageexplorer.com. The actual containers themselves, the storage accounts, and I've got one right here called ST for storage account. AW is the Andy Weather one. And you can see that Andy Weather CSV file we were talking about earlier. It's about to be uploaded again. It is 4:08 p.m. Eastern Time here on Friday, the 9th of December, 2022. and it's going to load one at about 412. Every hour, it doesn't upload here. And again, this is firing the same way. Whenever that blob is created, and of course this one's overridden, so it's first deleted and then uploaded a fresh new copy of it. When it finishes uploading, it triggers the process that populates Andy Weather. And let's see, under pipeline here, this is the one that I've set up for playing around, and I've connected it to that blob. That trigger here, and notice it says, hey, I don't find anything in here that matches that. That's okay. Are you ready for the magic? Here's the magic, and I don't know everything about this. I'm kind of learning this as I go, but what it's doing is it's reading the name of the parameters that I created in this pipeline. So when it sees that blob name parameter, it's coming up here and saying, hey, do you want to populate that from this particular trigger execution? And there's a number of fields that are available to you. One of them is the @ they all start with that trigger body, and it's case sensitive, and begin in paren. Kind of like when we saw the parameters, right? Pipeline begin in paren. We had an @ pipeline begin in paren dot parameters dot parameter name. The name here is file name, and I'm pretty sure, like I said, it's case sensitive. There's a number of these out there, but this is how they work. If you're starting to hook them together, and this is what was throwing me. I know it sounds stupid, but I was missing that step. Oh, I've got to create the parameter in the pipeline first, and then when I assign a trigger, when I get to this third step here, it'll pop this edit trigger screen up and show me the trigger run parameters. It wasn't doing this because I thought, well, I'll come back after I've assigned a trigger and do this again. And there's some ways to manage that and make that happen, but this is the easiest way to go. Put parameters in your pipeline first. Now, another thing that threw me, and maybe it'll throw you, maybe not, was I was like, well, wait a minute. Parameters are read-only while the pipeline is executing. And I said the right thing, but I didn't pay attention to the second half of that. Because you think about it, when this trigger fires, it's going to give me it's going to send this value, the trigger body, begin in paren dot file name. So when I drop a blob, I'm going to drop a CSV file into that pipeline container. It's going to push that into the parameter named blob name. And you're like, well, Andy, you just said it's read only. I did, but I finished that thought by saying when the pipeline is executing. This is going to happen before execution begins, right before it, mind you, but still before. So it's going to call the pipeline. It's going to push whatever the file name is from the @ trigger body begin in paren object or ADF artifact. It's going to read that field and it's going to put that value into the pipeline parameter. What happens after that? Well, this activity runs here. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And we've got this activity here, and our settings say, hey, push the value of that blob name, which now has been filled in prior to the execution starting. It's going to fill that in with triggerbody.file name. And like I said, there's a collection of them. There's folder paths, which will tell you the container / directory. Even if they're subdirectories, it'll put them all in there. That's the folder path that, trigger body begin in paren dot folder path. There's trigger body begin in paren dot start time. And depending on the type of trigger you configure, there's even more things that you can set up. But I found this one kind of cool because it helped me solve a problem that I was trying to solve. So we're all ready. I'm going to go ahead and click publish here. And we're going to publish our pipeline. We should see some toast popping up here in just a minute. There we go. It's telling me that it's publishing. And then in a minute, it's going to say I'm published. And once it does that, we should be able to drag and drop a CSV file into that pipeline container. And I've actually got some set up here. in my data. It doesn't matter what these do. It just matters that they show up. And here's one called pipeline underscore child dash pipeline dot CSV. So I'm going to drag this over and drop it. And it's going to, you'll see in the activities here, it'll do a copy. It's queued to transfer. And once it's done, it's transferring now. And once it's done, then there's my CSV file. So if I go now to Azure Data Factory, look at monitor, I'm hoping I see that Frank and Andy pipeline running. And I was running my mouth so much, it finished. And I can click on this, and again, in the monitor page of Azure Data Factory's dashboard, if I click on that, I can go look at what happened when it ran. So let me zoom out here and kind of get things a little closer so we can take a look. My set variable, which is the only activity I have in this pipeline, it executed and succeeded, and the pipeline succeeded. And here's where I can get some information about, what was going on. So that's the input, and this is the output, and this is what I want to see. And look, there's the name of the CSV file that triggered this. Now you may look at me and say, well, big whoop, Andy. Give me a minute. Let's put another one in. Let's pick this one down here, pipeline underscore child pipeline dash 3 dot CSV. And once that pops into there, now I can go back to my pipeline runs. I should see a second run if I refresh. There's my second run. And if I look at the output, now I'm seeing that file. So all of a sudden, what I'm hoping becomes somewhat apparent to you is this can be applied in a pattern where you're getting files from all over, and when they show up, right when they show up, you want to immediately fire a load and run a pipeline that does more than this. And the pipeline I showed you just for a minute at the very beginning of this that I closed pretty quick is what I've been playing with. And what I'm doing in there is I'm actually reading that file and pushing it into a database. And then I'm using a copy activity for that. And I'm doing it with a dynamic setting for the source, right? Because I don't know what the name of the blob's going to be. I'm reading that from here and using that to write that value. Again, the only reason I'm doing set variable activities is so I can do what I just did here. I can go to the actual execution and read what value popped up. And it's kind of cool, but I can move that data, say, into a table or into a Parquet file or into anything else. Copy data can do a number of things. Anything that I can see, and I'm moving it into a SQL server using Azure SQL DB target. And then I have a script activity that's going and reading from that table. And that's what I'm tinkering with right now. Once I read that, then can I act on the data that is contained here inside of this? But if you just needed to load that data, you could set this up. And just anytime a file shows up, so maybe you got files showing up at 9:30 p.m. local time, and then some other files showing up at 1:45 a.m. Doesn't matter. As soon as they get there, this trigger will fire and it'll attempt to load it. And if it fails, of course, it'll give you a failure message, and whatever happened there. But it's kind of cool that as soon as that data is available for you, you can fire a pipeline and then load it back. And like I said, one nice thing about this, when compared with other data integration engines that employ file watching stuff, the onBlob created event isn't raised until after that file is finished loading. So what would happen in some data integration engines is the file would begin loading, and maybe there's a gig of text in there. Lord help you if you're trying to load a gig from text, but it happens. And if it starts loading and you've got something checking it every minute or two, maybe it sees, oh, there's a file there. It's time to go run the loader. Well, it tries to run the loader and you get something like a file's not ready or file in use error, or even worse, it it loads some of the data and tells you it's loaded all of it. Ooh, that's bad. This doesn't even start until that blob is created and stable, sitting up there in Storage Explorer in my container. So I love that. Love that bit of functionality. No extra charge for that. Let's modify this just a little bit while we're here, and it's working so well. I'm going to tell this. I'm going to give it a better name, and I'm also going to go to my parameters and I'll make a new parameter called blob. I'll call it blob path, and then here we'll make a new variable, and I'm going to call this vblob folder path, just to show you it doesn't have to be named close to the same. A lot of what I want is in here already. I'm just going to clone this. I love this, being able to clone right here in there. And I'm going to say on success, go ahead and run that one. And let's now change this name to vblob folder path. Fill that variable in. Over here, we're going to pick the vblob folder path, and we want it to use this other parameter here called blob path. So I'm just going to delete that and then click on vblob folder path. The last thing I need to do is I want to go back through this trigger, and I'm going to edit it this time. So I'm going to click on it. I'm not going to reselect it. It's already selected. Click continue, and it's looking. It should find my two CSVs. Before I didn't have anything in there. And now it should pop up with two variables here. You can see that? So again, these are not variables. These are parameters. And I'm just going to type folder path here and spell that correctly. It will definitely blow up if you put a parameter name in there that does not exist. When I republish, redeploy, it tells me that both these have been edited. I click publish. And as soon as they're done, in fact, while they're kind of clearing out here, I'm going to go ahead and delete. Let's multi-select there and click delete. And let's see, did it finish? Is that what it's saying up there? Oh, I missed it. But yes, no, it is publishing still because I've got that number 2. There's the published completed message I was after. So I'm going to pop into folder 1 now, and I've got a pipeline 1 here, and I'm going to do this again. And what I'm hoping it'll show me is you're in pipeline folder 1. That's a folder path, and then the name of this is going to be pipeline_child-pipeline-1. Let's take a look-see and refresh here. We should have a third run. There we go. And let's look. We've got 2 now set variable activities in here. One is giving us the name, and sure enough, there's the name we've been seeing before, but here's the new one. And if we look at that output, there it is, pipeline/folder1. It does go deeper than that if you need it to, and I'll show you here. Let's pop back to here. Let's go up one, and inside of folder 3, I've got a folder 3A folder, and I'll put the associated blob with that, the pipeline folder 3A, and we'll drop back in here and refresh. Maybe we'll catch it in progress. Nope, it is too quick for us. But note again, if we look at it, this was nested, right? It was a folder in a folder. There's our name, 3A. That's not the right thing. Yep, that's the right thing. And zoom it. Gotta love zoom it. And then when we look at the folder path, you see there's pipeline and then a folder in there named folder 3 and a subfolder named folder 3A. So there's a lot you can do with this. Again, you can record those names, and there's some pieces and parts that I'm working on that I'm going to share probably for the first time at the SQL Bits conference in March of 2023. I'm very honored to be doing what they call a training day. It's a full day of training, and I'm going to be talking more about this very thing as part of a super secret unveiling there. It's over in Wales at ICC Wales. which is a big conference center there. I'm very honored to be going over. Haven't been to SQL Bits in person since around 2014, maybe 2013, something like that. I did do a remote um, training day there, and I think 2020, but that's been too long too. It's literally SQL Bits is my favorite data conference of all. It's not that the other ones are bad or anything. I've been very honored to speak at the Data Platform Summit in India and the past Data Community Summit in Seattle and SQL Bits before, and numerous SQL Saturdays and events like that. And it's an honor to present at every single one of them. It's not that there's anything wrong with the rest. They're all awesome. It's just SQL Bits is a touch more awesome. So, and I've made no secret of that since I went to my very first one, more than 10 years ago. So anyway, if you have questions about this, you can reach out to me. My email address is in one of these captions here. Let's see if I can find it. Let's see. Where am I? I've got too many captions here. That's a problem. Okay, there. I just showed it. Andy.Leonard at entdna.com. That's short for Enterprise Data and Analytics. And if you email me, I'd be happy to, answer any questions that you have about this at all. Promise there's going to be some more on this, even before March when I fly over to Wales. But yeah, these are just a nice little bite-sized snippet. So I'd be happy to take any questions now. Just drop them into an email and send them over to me. If you're watching this live, thanks for hanging in here with me. If you're not, if you're watching the recording, wow, thanks for watching the recording. And I really want to thank Frank for dropping in for a little bit. He asked great questions, and he helped keep me on topic here for the people who don't know what I'm talking about when I just dive into the geeky stuff. That happens a lot. It is December 2022 here in the U.S. in Farmville, Virginia. I wish you and your loved ones a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And thank you for listening.